Wyoming Territory, spring of 1879, the wind howled low across the plains as Elira O'Neal gripped the reins of her father's old wagon, her belly round beneath her worn riding coat, the child inside kicking hard against her ribs. The man who had promised her forever was gone. He left the morning after she told him she was with child, rode off without a word, leaving nothing behind but boot prints in the mud and a broken promise. Elira had waited 2 weeks, too stubborn to cry, too proud to beg. But when the ranch hands stopped looking her in the eye and her father refused to speak to her altogether, she hitched the mules herself and left the O'Neal ranch behind. Now, with the sky heavy and her heart even heavier, she headed west with nowhere to go. She had no idea how far she had made it before the storm rolled in. Rain hit hard and fast. The mules spooked and reared, the wagon was caught in a rut. All at once, the world tipped, snapped, and crashed. When she came to, her right leg was pinned under the wagon frame, slick with blood, and she could not move. She tried to cry for help, but her voice cracked. There was no one for miles. Then, through the sheets of rain, a figure stepped out from the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, bare-chested beneath a buffalo hide cloak, long black hair braided and tied with red thread. He moved like the storm did not touch him. His eyes, dark and steady, locked on hers. He said nothing at first, just crouched beside her, his hands gentle as he checked the twisted leg. "I will move the wagon," he said, low and calm. "Then I will carry you." "You do not know me," she rasped. "I do not need to." His name was Pahoka. She learned that later, once the fire was lit and she was dry, wrapped in a woven blanket inside a small lean-to he had built within the hour. He spoke little, but never left her side. He brought water from the creek and fed her from his satchel dried bison, roots, and a few berries. "You live out here alone?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I travel between camps," Pahoka said. "But right now, I stay with you." She stared at him, the heat of the fire flickering across his sharp cheekbones. "Why?" "Because you are hurt. Because your child needs you." That night, as rain tapped on the hide roof, Elira curled on her side, one hand against her stomach, the other resting near his. She did not know what to make of this man who had found her, carried her, fed her, sheltered her without asking for anything in return. She only knew she had never felt safer. The next morning, he helped her sit up, carefully bracing her leg with a strip of softwood and sinew. She winced, but did not cry out. "You are strong," he said. Elira looked down at her hands. "I do not feel strong." He touched her hand, firm and warm. "You are." In the days that followed, Pahoka built a better shelter, gathered food, and tended her leg, never rushing, never impatient. He spoke when necessary, listened without judgment. Elira found herself telling him things she had never dared say aloud. "My father said I shamed the family," she whispered once, watching the fire. "That I would bring ruin to the ranch." Pahoka's gaze did not waver. "Then your father does not know what true shame is." She blinked at him. "You do not think I am ruined?" "No," his hand brushed her cheek, "just once. You are carrying life. That is not ruin. That is strength." The baby kicked again. She smiled through tears. "A girl, I think." Pahoka smiled too, faint but real. "She will be fierce, like her mother." By the 10th day, her leg had improved enough that she could stand with his help. He fashioned a crutch from a pine branch and walked with her slowly beneath the morning sun. "Pahoka," she asked as they rested by the creek, "why are you still here?" He turned to her, quiet for a long moment. "You were left behind," he said. "That will not happen again." Her breath caught. "But you do not know me." "I know enough. You are kind. Brave. You protect your child. That is all I need." She looked at him, her heart thudding loud in her ears. "You do not have to stay." "I do not stay because I have to," he said. "I stay because I want to. And because I claim you as my wife." Elira stared at him, stunned. "Your wife?" He nodded, simple and sure. "If you will have me." She let out a shaky breath. "You would take me? Even with this?" She placed a hand on her belly. He stepped closer, took her hand in his. "You carry a child. I will raise her as my own. I will protect you both. I will never leave." Something deep inside her cracked open then, and warmth spilled in. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will have you." He drew her into his arms, carefully, gently. And for the first time in weeks, Elira let herself lean into someone really lean in, knowing she would not fall. Later, as they sat by the fire, her head resting on his chest, she whispered. Will we stay here forever? No, Pahoka said. I will take you to my people. You will be safe. You will be home. Elira Gray Owl, he said softly, trying her new name on his tongue. She smiled, her heart full. Yes, that fits. The wind outside had calmed, and in its place came the sound of birds waking, the world beginning again. And for the first time, so did she. The smell of wet sage hung in the air as the sun edged up over the ridge. Pahoka had gone to check the trap line before dawn, leaving Elira to wake to the low crackle of embers and the quiet hush of the Wyoming prairie. Her leg ached dully, but the swelling had gone down, and she could bear weight now with the help of the pine crutch. She stepped outside the shelter. The earth was soft beneath her feet, and the trees, still beaded with last night's rain, caught the morning light like glass. She moved slowly, each step measured and steady. When she reached the edge of the creek, she paused to watch the water run against smooth stones. Her reflection, pale and drawn, stared back. I look like I've never slept a day in my life, she muttered. You look like someone who's still standing, came his voice behind her. She turned to see him approaching with a brace of rabbits slung over one shoulder, his moccasins soundless on the damp earth. He'd tied his hair back with a strip of hide, and his chest was dusted with flakes of ash from the fire he'd banked earlier. He didn't smile, but there was a softness in his eyes. You left early, she said. The traps don't wait, he answered. Neither does hunger. She watched him skin the rabbits with practiced hands, his blade moving clean and sure. You learned that from your father? She asked. No, from my grandmother. He died when I was 3 winters old. She taught me how to dress meat, stitch moccasins, read tracks. She said a man who cannot care for others is no man at all. Was she kind to you? She was fierce, he said, pulling the skin from the second rabbit in one long motion. She never allowed weakness in herself, but she gave others the space to be wounded. Elira lowered herself to sit on a flat stone. I think I would have liked her. She would have liked you, he said without looking up. You don't flinch from pain. She traced a finger along the ridge of her knee. Pain doesn't wait either. That night, they ate the rabbit over a slow-burning fire, the meat rich and tender. Afterward, Pahoka brought out a bundle wrapped in rawhide and began to unravel it beside the flames. Inside was a length of soft leather dyed deep red, with 2 eagle feathers bound at the seam. What's that? A cradleboard, he said. My grandmother made it for my cousin's son. When he walked his first steps, she gave it to me. She said I'd need it one day. Elira reached out and touched the leather. It's beautiful. It is strong, he said. It holds the child tight against the mother's back, so she can walk, work, carry water. I will add willow bark and lining. It will be ready before she comes. She blinked. You're certain it's a girl? I dreamed of her, he said. 3 nights ago. You were singing to her beneath a cottonwood tree. What was I singing? He tilted his head. The words weren't clear, but it made her quiet. Elira ran her fingers along the edge of the cradleboard. I've never held a baby, never changed one. I don't know what I'm doing, Pahoka. He reached out, not hesitantly, and laid his hand over hers. You will learn. We both will. A breeze stirred the firelight, and she looked up at his face, the fire catching in the angles of his jaw and brow. Do you want to be a father? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his satchel and pulled out a small pouch. From it, he took a carved piece of antler, shaped like a feather, with a hole drilled through the top. I made this the winter my grandmother passed, he said. I carved it for the child I hoped would come into my life when the time was right. He pressed it into her hand. Now the time is right. Elira closed her fingers around it, her breath catching in her throat. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the warrior who had carried her from the storm, but the man who had waited for the right time, the right path, and had chosen her. You're not afraid? She whispered. I have faced snowblind nights and charging buffalo, he said. But nothing has ever asked more courage of me than choosing to stay. And I stay. That night, she lay curled beside him, her back against his chest, the carved feather clasped in her hand. The stars stretched wide overhead, and somewhere in the dark, a coyote called out, low and lonesome. But Elira wasn't alone. Not anymore. By late May, the snowmelt had turned the creek swift and clear, and the wild onion shoots were tall enough to gather. Pahoka rose early to hunt and scout, often returning with game birds or strips of bitterroot tucked into his sash. Elira, steadier on her leg now, had begun boiling down herbs he showed her, learning which eased muscle ache and which calmed a restless belly. Her hands had grown more certain, her movements deliberate. She didn't speak of the ranch. She didn't need to. Each day reshaped her further from the girl who'd left it. One morning, she sat near the fire with rabbit hide stretched taut over a willow frame, trying to mimic the stitching Pahoka had demonstrated the night before. Her fingers fumbled the sinew, catching more often than not. "You hold it too tight," he said, crouching beside her. "Let it move with you. I'm not good at this. You've never done it before. That's not the same." She handed him the frame reluctantly. "Show me again." He threaded the sinew through the awl hole slowly, pausing between gestures so she could watch. His hands were large, but precise, and he didn't rush. "Here," he said, nudging the hide back into her lap. "Try." She took it again, this time letting her grip ease. The thread slid through smoother, and when she looked up, he was watching her, not the hide. "I thought it would take longer," she said. "What?" "For you to look at me the way you do now." He didn't look away. "I saw you clearly from the first moment. You're just beginning to see yourself." She swallowed. "I want to be enough. For you. For her. You are not a measure to be filled, Elira. You already are." She dropped her gaze, breath catching in her throat. "I don't know how to be anyone's wife." "Then we'll learn that too." Later that day, he took her east along the creek bed, where the land curved into low hills dotted with chokecherry trees. He pointed out the tracks of elk, the scat of a badger, and a piece of obsidian half buried in the soil. "My people passed through here in early spring," he said. This was a resting place before the soldiers pushed them north. She turned the shard of black stone in her fingers. "Do you miss them?" "I miss the sound of them moving together. The way the drums echoed across the hills at night. But what I miss most are the things that have no sound. The way my uncle watched the sky before speaking. The way my cousin carried her brother slung over her back while she wove grass rope. You speak of them like they're still close. They are. Not in body. But none of it leaves me." She looked out across the wide, empty land. "I've never belonged anywhere that way. You do now." That evening, she stood near the fire, her back sore and her belly heavy. She shifted, trying to find comfort, but her breath caught under her ribs. Pahoka noticed immediately. Pain. Not sharp. Just pressure. He knelt and placed a hand against her side, listening with his cheek against her stomach. Then he straightened. "She's moving down. It won't be long." Her face went pale. "I'm not ready. You will be. We have time to prepare. I don't know how to bring a child into the world." "I do." She looked at him, startled. "You do. I've helped 2 births. My cousin's wife, and once a woman we found lost in the hills. Both lived. So did their children." Relief swelled through her, so swift it made her knees weak. She sat hard on the ground, blinking fast. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing. Just rest. I'll gather willow bark and heat stones tonight. Tomorrow we build a birthing shelter." She hesitated. "You'll stay with me?" "Through it. I won't leave your side." Night fell soft over the camp. The fire burned low. She lay wrapped in furs, her hand resting lightly over the curve of her stomach. "Pahoka." He looked up from the cradle board he was finishing. "Why did you never take a wife before?" "Because I never met a woman who moved through pain without bitterness." She turned to face him fully. "And you think I'm not bitter?" "I think you are now and then. But you don't let it poison your hands." Silence stretched between them. "I was so certain I'd be alone in this," she whispered. "I'd made peace with the idea." He set the cradle board aside and came to her. "You don't have to be alone again." His hand cupped her jaw, calloused and warm. Her breath trembled, and she leaned into his touch. He kissed her, slow and sure. She tasted earth and fire and something steady beneath it all. When she pulled back, her voice shook. "You mean to keep me forever?" "I already do," he said. And she believed him. The birthing shelter stood just beyond the tree line, where the cottonwoods grew close and the ground sloped gently toward the creek. Pahoka had built it over 2 days, binding willow branches and pine poles with rawhide, then covering the frame in buffalo hide and layers of bark to hold warmth. Elira had watched from her place near the fire, her hands busy with stitching the last of the cradleboard's lining while she memorized each movement of his work. Early June brought the scent of blooming wild rose, and the low hum of insects thickened the grass. The days had turned warm enough that she shed her outer coat, the weight of it too much for her swelling shape. Her gait had slowed, but the strength in her returned in quiet ways, how she gathered water without being asked, how her voice no longer trembled when she spoke. That morning, she sat outside the shelter, resting her feet in the cool creek water. Pahoka crouched beside her, working a flint knife over a fresh elk hide with long, smooth strokes. "How far are we from your people?" she asked, watching the blade glint in the sunlight. "For days, if we move steady," he said. "But not now. I couldn't make it, not like this." "No. After the child comes, when you are healed." She squinted at the horizon. "Do they know about me?" "They will." She looked at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "What if they don't want me? There is no they who choose for me. I say who I bring into my life. They will see that." She ran her fingers through the water. "I never thought about living any place but my father's land. Now I can't imagine going back." "You won't need to," he said, not pausing his work. "You have a place with me." She was quiet for a time, then asked, "Will you give her a name from your family?" "I will wait until I see her face. Then I will know what to call her." She nodded, then reached for the small satchel of dried mint leaves she'd gathered the day before. "My mother's name was Ada. She kept a garden. I remember how she'd rub mint on her hands when she had a headache." Said it cleared her thinking. "You remember her well?" "She died when I was 11. I can't recall her laugh anymore, but I remember her hands, always stained with soil. She rolled a leaf between her fingers. She would have liked you. I would have liked her." That evening, a warm wind stirred the prairie grasses, and the moon rose full and low. Inside the shelter, Elira leaned against the piled bedding, her breath coming hard and uneven. It had started just before dusk, a tightening low in her belly that spread like a slow wave. Now the pain rolled and steady, and she gripped the edge of the fur beneath her, her jaw tight. Pahoka knelt beside her, a damp cloth in one hand, his other hand pressed firm to her back. The fire outside cast flickering light through the shelter's seams. "Breathe with it," he said. "Let it pass through." She let out a jagged breath. "How long?" "Not long now. She is ready." Sweat clung to her brow. "I'm afraid." "I know." She turned her face toward him. "Don't leave. I am here." The next pain came stronger, and she cried out, her voice cracking. He steadied her, guiding her into the position he had shown her earlier, kneeling, hands braced on folded hides. He moved with calm certainty, speaking low as he checked her progress. "She is close. You are doing well. I can't. You can." Her eyes locked on his, and something anchored her there. She bore down, body trembling, her voice raw with effort. And then, through the sweat and ache, the air shifted. A cry broke into the night. He caught the child in his hands, wrapped her in softened hide, and held her close to his chest before placing her gently into Elira's arms. The baby's skin was flushed, her dark hair slicked down, her mouth opening in a tight, determined wail. Elira stared at the tiny face, her breath hitching. "She's here." Pahoka crouched beside her, his hand resting on the child's back. "She is strong. She has your eyes." He smiled, slow and quiet. "She will see the world clearly." Elira kissed the baby's brow, her tears slipping down without shame. "Ada," she whispered. "We'll call her Ada." Pahoka nodded. "A good name." They stayed like that, the three of them wrapped in the warmth of the shelter while outside the wind rustled the grass and the moon climbed higher. When the child had drifted into sleep, Elira leaned her head against Pahoka's shoulder. "We made something good, didn't we?" He placed his arm around her, drawing her close. "We made a life." She closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the first time, there was no ache beneath her ribs, no hollow behind her heart. Only the weight of her daughter in her arms and the man who had chosen her without condition, without question. And in that stillness, peace settled in her bones. The wind carried the scent of warmed earth and distant pine as summer settled deep into the land. The grasses stood tall, humming with bees, and the days stretched long and golden. In the mornings, Elira walked slowly with Ada strapped to her chest in the cradleboard, her steps firm now, the ache in her leg a quiet memory. Pahoka walked beside her, his bow slung across his back, showing her how to read the flattened bends in grass where deer had passed or the broken berry branches along the banks. They moved with quiet rhythm, she gathering, he hunting, Ada sleeping against her heartbeat. One afternoon, as they returned to camp with their baskets full of wild plum and dried fish, Pahoka stopped short beneath the shadow of a cottonwood. "There are riders," he said. Elira froze. "Soldiers?" "No, not in uniform. 2 men." He crouched, studying the fresh tracks in the soft dirt. "Wagon ruts." "They passed through at dawn." She laid a hand across Ada's back. "You think they saw the shelter?" No, he said. They followed the creek south. But we should move soon. I thought we'd stay until the fall. We can't risk it. Strangers bring unknown hearts. That night, while Ada slept between them wrapped in deerskin, Elira turned toward him in the dark. You said your people are 4 days from here. He nodded. Northwest, toward the Bighorn foothills. I'm ready. He touched her hand. It will be hard travel. You'll carry her most of the way. I carried her into this world. I can carry her through it. They left the next morning, the shelter dismantled and buried beneath brush and soil. Elira rode in the wagon Pahoka had repaired from the one that had first brought her across the plains, its wool fixed with rawhide and pine pegs. Ada lay cradled near her mother's side, swaying gently with the rutted trail. Pahoka walked ahead, guiding the mules with quiet whistles, his eyes scanning the ridge lines. Each night, they camped near water and boiled dried meat with wild onion. Elira learned to start fire from flint and steel, her hands growing stronger with each mile. On the third evening, as the land climbed toward low hills and the trees thickened, she saw smoke curling in the distance. Is that them? She asked, cradling Ada close. Pahoka stood still, watching the skies. Yes, I see the signal. They made camp a half-mile out that night, and he sent up a fire mark of his own 3 short bursts, one long. By morning, riders came. 3 women and 1 older man approached first, all mounted, all quiet-eyed. Pahoka stepped forward and raised a hand. It has been many seasons, he said in Lakota. The older man dismounted slowly. And we have waited many more. Elira stood beside the wagon, Ada resting in her sling. One of the women approached her, eyes sharp but not unkind. You are his wife? She asked. I am, Elira said. The woman looked at the child, then at Elira's hands, which were rough and ringed with ash from fire building. She nodded once. You did not ride to ease. No, you stayed through pain. I did. The woman gave a single nod. Good. We will make space. They were led into the camp nestled between 2 ridges, where hide tents and log shelters stood among the trees. Children stared openly. Elders watched with curiosity, but no hostility. Pahoka introduced her not with pride, but with steadiness, as if the fact of her belonging needed no defense. That evening, a cook fire was lit near the center lodge. A heavy stew of elk and root vegetables simmered over the coals. Pahoka's cousin, a stocky man with a crooked nose and a quiet laugh, brought out a drum and began a low, slow rhythm. Elira sat beside Pahoka, Ada asleep in her arms, the cradleboard tucked beside her. The firelight flickered across his face, and she reached for his hand. I didn't think I'd ever feel wanted again. He turned to her. You were never unwanted. You were only waiting to be seen. She rested her head on his shoulder. I see you. I see all of it now. He laid his hand across her back, holding her against him. You are home, he said. She looked around at the people, the fire, the rhythm that pulsed through the ground beneath her feet. I believe you. They were given a small shelter at the edge of camp, near a grove of quaking aspen. The walls were woven with willow and bark, and the roof was stitched hide. Inside, Pahoka hung the feather carving she had carried through labor, and Elira placed Ada's cradle beside it. Seasons turned. Elira learned the language slowly, through stories the elders told and songs the children hummed. She traded herbs for cloth and helped in the smokehouse. Pahoka taught boys how to string a bow, and sometimes in the long dusk hours, he would bring Elira prairie sage in his hands, saying nothing, just offering it with the quiet that meant everything. One crisp morning, Ada took her first step between them, reaching from one to the other with a wide-eyed grin. They laughed not loud, but full, and Elira wept without shame. That night, as frost kissed the edges of the fire pit and the stars wheeled overhead, Elira lay beside Pahoka beneath the thick firs, Ada asleep between them. You gave me this life, she whispered. No, he said, brushing a hand through her hair. You found it. I only walked beside you. She turned toward him, their foreheads touching. I love you, she said, quiet as breath. He smiled, eyes warm. And I will love you until the last fire goes out. They held each other as the wind stirred the leaves, and sleep came easy. Years later, when their daughter ran through the tall grass with wild braids and bare feet, Elira would watch her and remember the woman she'd once been, broken beneath a wagon in the storm, and know that nothing had been lost, only transformed. And every evening, when Pahoka returned from the hunt, and his eyes found hers across the clearing, She would feel it again, that first moment of safety, the quiet steadiness of love that never asked, only stayed. Together, they built a life not out of what was broken, but out of what was carried forward, truth, trust, and the kind of love that neither time nor pain could undo.